Hello, I'm Liz Hill. Welcome to Podsnappery, the willful determination to ignore the objectionable or inconvenient, at the same time assuming airs of superior virtue and noble resignation. We explore things I find interesting, unusual, or annoying. And this episode ticks all those boxes. So let's get down to it and spill the tea. By now, I am sure you have heard or seen this.
We're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies.
You got me. I don't have children, and I own cats. Many people, women especially, found this to be offensive. I know I did, but guess what? We are not alone.
Taylor Swift endorses Kamala Harris for president, all while proudly taking a stance as a childless cat lady.
I go home to the cats.
And let me say what an honor it is to work with two guys who are this far away from being childless cat ladies.
A Republican candidate for vice president would never attack a woman for having kids. So, as they say, my work here is done. Meow.
Does this make us bad people? Does it make us a danger to democracy? No. We'll leave that to those weird guys making such claims. Now, granted, it was a dig at certain Democratic politicians, and this comes from those on the extreme right. You know, those people. A certain kind of people.
Morons.
Fair, but I meant maggots. These are the supporters of a felon and failed former president. These are the people with the red hats, flying flags from pickup trucks, and who look to 1776 and the Declaration of Independence as their new revolution or a coming civil war, right? But I want to share something with you about that declaration that they don't know. What if I told you that a childless cat lady has her name on the Declaration of Independence?
What?
It's true. Mary Catherine Goddard was her name, and this newspaper publisher was a key figure in promoting the ideas that fomented the American Revolution. When the British forced the Continental Army out of New Jersey in December of 1776, the Second Continental Congress packed up the Declaration and moved from Philadelphia to Baltimore out of fear.
Run away!
But when they learned that Washington crossed the Delaware River on Christmas Day and had beaten the Redcoats at Trenton and Princeton, Congress ordered a second printing of the Declaration, and for the first time, with their names printed on it.
That's a pretty large signature, Johnny.
So Fat George in London can read it without his glasses.
For the job, Congress turned to one of the most important journalists of America's Revolutionary era, and as Baltimore's postmaster, she was likely the United States government's first female employee. Normally, she identified herself on her printed work as M.K. Goddard, but at the bottom of the broadside, issued on January 1777, she added to the Declaration, Baltimore in Maryland, printed by Mary Catherine Goddard. Clearly, she felt the importance of this document. For most of history, Mary's document has been called the Goddard Broadside, but she gave it the title, the Unanimous Declaration of the 13 United States of America. A little long, but an impressive title nonetheless. Mary arranged the text in 2 columns, then listed each colony and its delegates. The Goddard Broadside was the second official printing of the Declaration of Independence. The first took place the evening of July 4th, 1776, by John Dunlap, the official printer of Congress, but didn't include the signers' names. Congress ordered 13 broadsides of the Declaration of Independence, one for each colony. It was the first official document intended for preservation. John Hancock instructed each colony to include the Goddard Broadside as part of its official records and archives. They were hand-delivered to each of the 13 colonies. Today, only 9 of the Goddard Broadsides are known to exist. For 3 years after taking over Baltimore's 6-month-old Maryland Journal from her vagabond indebted brother, Goddard had advocated for the Patriot cause. She editorialized against British brutality, reprinted Thomas Paine's Common Sense, and published extra editions about Congress's call to arms and the Battle of Bunker Hill. Clearly, she had no trouble speaking her mind. In her 23-year publishing career, Goddard earned a place in history as one of the most prominent publishers during the nation's Revolutionary era. Goddard wrote the following in Baltimore Journal in 1775 after the battles of Lexington and Concord. The ever-memorable 19th of April gave a conclusive answer to the questions of American freedom. What think ye of Congress now? That day evidenced that Americans would rather die than live slaves. But not everyone in Baltimore agreed with her views. Yeah, the Whig Club threatened Mary and raided her print shop in an effort to make her stop printing pro-revolutionary sentiments. But Mary refused to back down. She took her complaint to the State Assembly in Annapolis and advocated for freedom of speech and freedom of the press. And she won.
We won. All right, hey. All right, good job, guys. Let's just not come in tomorrow. Let's just take a day.
So who was this childless cat lady? Born June 16th, 1738, in New London, Connecticut, into a family of printers and postmasters, Goddard was taught reading and math by her mother, Sarah, a well-tutored daughter of a wealthy landowner. She also studied Latin, French, and science in New London's public school, where girls could receive hour-long lessons after the boys' schooling was done for the day. Think about it.
No. You are a girl. You will not go to school anymore.
In 1755, the family's fortunes changed when Goddard's father, Postmaster Giles Goddard, became too ill to work. Sarah sent Mary's younger brother, 15-year-old William, to New Haven to work as a printer's apprentice. 7 years later, after Giles's death, the Goddards moved to Providence, and Sarah financed Rhode Island's first newspaper, the Providence Gazette. William, then 21, was listed as publisher. It carried his imprint, but displayed from the start his mother's business sense and his sister's steadiness, according to Sharon M. Murphy in the 1983 book, Great Women of the Press. Over the next 15 years, William, a restless and impulsive young entrepreneur, moved from Providence to Philadelphia to Baltimore to start newspapers, always putting his mother or sister in charge of his previous businesses as he went. In 1768, William sold the Providence paper and convinced Sarah and Mary Catherine to move to Philadelphia to help him run his Pennsylvania Chronicle. In 1770, Sarah died, and William, who was feuding with his financial partners, left the Chronicle in his sister's hands. Ward L. Minor wrote in his 1962 biography, William Goddard, Newspaperman, "She was dependable, and he brilliantly erratic." Mary Catherine kept her brother's businesses running while he did time in debtor's prison in 1771 and 1775. In February 1774, William handed control of his fledgling Maryland Journal over to her. That allowed him to concentrate on building his most enduring business, a private postal service free from British control, which later became the U.S. Post Office.
Here's the mail that never fails. It makes me want to wag my tail. When it comes, I want a whale mail!
Mary Catherine Goddard took over the Maryland Journal just as the colonists' anger at British rule surged toward revolution. By June 1774, she was publishing reports on Britain's blockade of Boston Harbor. In early April 1775, she endorsed the women-led homespun movement against British textiles, encouraging women to raise flax and wool and embrace frugality. She published Thomas Paine's Common Sense in 2 installments in the paper and covered the Revolution's first battle with fervor. "The British behaved with savage barbarity," she wrote in her June 7th edition in 1775. Definitely a woman not afraid to speak her mind and set it to print. Tell it like it is. That July, the Continental Congress adopted William Goddard's postal system, then promptly appointed the more reliable Benjamin Franklin as Postmaster General. Mary Catherine was named Baltimore's postmaster that October, which technically made her the United States' only female employee when the nation was born in July 1776. When Congress turned to her to print the Declaration the following year, she recognized her role in a historic moment. Though she usually signed her newspaper M.K. Goddard, she printed her full name on the document. The war years were tough on Goddard's businesses. Because of its meager treasury, Congress often failed to pay her, so she paid postwriters herself. She published the Maryland Journal irregularly in 1776, probably because of paper shortages. In 1778, she announced her willingness to barter with subscribers, accepting payments in beeswax, flour, lard, butter, beef, or pork. Yet she was able to boast in a November 1779 issue that the journal had as extensive a circulation as any newspaper in the United States. But sadly, her success didn't last. Mary's name disappeared from the newspaper in 1784. On January 2nd, 1784, both William and Mary were listed as publishers. Then, William was the only name listed just 4 days later. William forced Mary out of the business and declared himself publisher of the Maryland Journal. Later that year, the siblings published competing almanacs. William included a screed that attacked his sister as a hypocritical character and insulted her double-faced almanac, containing a mean, vulgar, and commonplace selection of articles. Mary filed 5 lawsuits against William, but lost them all. Mary struggled to earn a living after that, but she refused to give up and continued to operate her bookshop for about 20 years. There's no evidence that Goddard and her brother ever spoke again.
Well, I just thought it was stupid for 2 friends not to be talking.
Who are you calling stupid? Well, I'll tell you one thing. I may be stupid, but I'm smart enough never to talk to you again.
In October 1789, she lost her job as postmaster of Baltimore. The newly appointed Postmaster General Samuel Osgood replaced her with John White of Annapolis. John Burrell, Osgood's assistant, justified the move on sexist grounds. Since supervision of nearby post offices was being added to the job description, Burrell said, "More traveling might be necessary than a woman could undertake."
Really?
200 prominent Baltimore residents signed a letter demanding Goddard's reinstatement. Goddard herself appealed to President George Washington and the U.S. Senate for her job back. Her petition echoes the disappointment she must have felt when her brother pushed her out of the journal. Goddard wrote in the third person to the Senate on January 1790, when she was 51. "She hath been discharged without the smallest imputation of any fault. These are but poor rewards indeed for 14 years' faithful service performed in the worst of times. Her little office was established by her own industry in the best years of her life, and whereon depended all her future prospects of subsistence."
Pardon me, but could you help out a fellow American who's down on his luck?
Washington refused to intervene, and the Senate never answered Goddard's letter. She spent the next 20 years running a bookstore in Baltimore and selling dry goods. She never married and had no children. And truthfully, we can only assume at some point she had a cat. Before her death at the age of 78, on August 12, 1816, Goddard freed her single enslaved woman named Belinda Starling, bequeathing to her all of Goddard's possessions and property. She wrote in her will that she gives and grants to my female slave, Belinda Starling, aged about 26 years, her freedom at my death. And I also give and bequeath unto said Belinda Starling all the property of which I may did possessed, all which I do to recompense the faithful performance of duties to me. Goddard, as a contemporary of hers declared, was a woman of extraordinary judgment, energy, nerve, and strong good sense. Though sex discrimination and her ne'er-do-well brother ended her career too soon, Goddard left a mark as one of the Revolutionary era's most accomplished publishers and a female pioneer in the U.S. government. While Goddard may have been one of the New Republic's earliest victims of what would become known in the 19th century as the Postal Service's patronage system, she would not be the last woman to serve as postmaster.
Anything you can do, I can do better. I can do anything better than you.
Mary was a trailblazer, patriot, and accomplished businesswoman, printer, publisher, journalist, postmaster, and bookseller. And she achieved this success during a time when women held few legal rights. Men dominated life in colonial America. Back then, a married woman wasn't considered to be a separate legal person from her husband and couldn't own property, sign contracts, or keep her wages. So Mary stayed single, thus a childless cat lady. She worked around the system to become known as one of the best printers in colonial America.
I'll speak to the printer about it later on.
So, the willful determination to ignore the objectionable or inconvenient, at the same time assuming airs of superior virtue and noble resignation. That, my friends, is Podsnappery. Thanks for watching. I'm Liz Hill. As Chelsea Handler said in response to the Childless Cat Lady statement of J.D. Vance, I'd like to remind you that no president in the history of the United States has ever been a mother.
Hey diddle diddle, cat and a fiddle, there's a cow and a dish and a spoon. There's a crazy man with tiny hands and a mind that belongs on the moon. There's Persian, a calico, a Maltese, a Manx. All cats are welcome to us. It's a cat lover's elegy written with thanks. In cat people we put our trust. Cats can't vote, but we sure can. They need us to do it, and how? We'll take our cats to the polling booth and we'll vote with a mighty owl. We'll vote with a mighty meow. We'll vote with a mighty meow. Childless Cat Ladies.